This episode features strong drinks as well as strong language.
In this song, the donkey throws himself down on the ground and he refuses to work. And he cries out and he says a very famous Sicilian saying, which is "Usazio un criri all'udiuno," which means the man who has enough to eat never understands the man who is starving.
Welcome to Modo di Bere, the podcast about local drinks and local sayings. I'm your host, Rose Thomas Bannister. Today is a very special episode that's all about donkeys with returning guest Michela Musolino. Michela is a Sicilian-American singer and folklorist. You can hear a lot more of her music and learn more about her work by tuning in to Season 1, Episode 7 of this podcast. You can listen to both this episode and Michela's prior interview in Italian. Search for the podcast Modo di Bere Italiano. You can also watch this episode in both languages on the new YouTube channel for the podcast, youtube.com/@ModoDiBere podcast. Please go to michelamusolino.com and purchase some of her recordings, which make a fantastic gift. She has a lovely Christmas album. Today we have Michela Musolino, who is back. Welcome back, Michela.
It's nice to be here.
And this is a very special episode because it is all about donkeys.
Yay!
If you remember the episode Horse Crazy with Roberto di Filippo, who talked about bringing back traditional horse-plowed farming to Umbria and also practicing this in Romania, I posted some videos of Roberto in my apartment talking about how much he loves horses and how much he really loves donkeys. And Michela wrote to me. We had just published a beautiful interview with Michela called Wine Makes Blood. So you can look back and listen to this and hear Michela talking about her folk songs and this amazing folkloric, multi-instrumental background. And Michela wrote to me and said, "Oh my goodness, I love donkeys and Sicily loves donkeys and we have to talk about donkeys."
That's exactly what happened.
Thank you for supporting the show if you're on Patreon. Really couldn't do it without you. It means the world to me. And thank you. What are we going to be talking about today?
I saw the interview with Roberto about the donkeys. I was so excited because, as you mentioned, we have such a strong connection, Sicilian culture, with the donkey. And one of the songs that's in heavy rotation in my repertoire is called Sceccu. And it's a song about a donkey, obviously. Sceccu is one of the dialect words in Sicily for donkey. And it's a pretty cool song. It actually comes from a poem from 1848 when there was a lot of poverty, a lot of problems in Sicily, a lot of social problems. And it was right before the revolution broke out in Sicily, what they call the bread uprisings of 1848. So this was a poem by someone by the name of Salvatore Adelfio. And he was trying to kind of describe what was happening at the time. And he used this poem, he's a metaphor of the donkey. So in this poem, the donkey is working, and he's working for the boss, for the patrone. In Italian, say padrone, we say patroni in Sicilian. The donkey just asked him, he said, "Please, I'm starving. Could you just be, for the love of God, could you just give me like a little crust of bread to eat?" And the boss, he says, "Why should I feed you? You're a donkey. And even if I feed you, you're still going to be starving." So the song goes on. And in this song, the donkey throws himself down on the ground and he refuses to work. And he cries out and he says a very famous Sicilian saying, which is "Usazio un criri all'udiuno," which means the man who has enough to eat never understands the man who is starving. And that's how that song ends. The poem is from an old tradition. The song was actually, it was made into a song by friends of mine, but they did it way back in 1979 before I ever even knew who they were. My friend Rocco, who's a Sicilian folk musician. And it's a beautiful song because it tells us about history. It tells us about human nature. It tells us, the struggle between the haves and the have-nots. And it shows how it's just, in a moment you could ask somebody, please, just help me out. Just, have pity on me. Just, help me, and how we can be kind to each other. But sometimes, the way history is, we don't. But what's really interesting about this song is that there's another song that is very traditional in Sicilian folk music. This isn't so traditional. This is kind of one of those songs that you dig up and you introduce, and people are like, "Wow, I didn't know this existed." This song, I was thinking about the lyrics today too. The lyrics of Sceccu. I tend to focus on the punchline of that song, if you will, or the moral of that, where we say "Usatio un crere all'udiuno," which is, the one who has enough to eat never understands the one who's starving. But I was looking at the lyrics a little earlier today, and there's one part that when I sing it, I always love to see this metaphor in my head. There's another part of the lyrics where they say, "La scira in mano di un sacristano squaglia come la neve alla campia," which means the candle in the hand of the sacristan, it melts just like the snow on the field. And it's a metaphor to try to tell us about how fleeting time is. And when we sing that, it's the donkey's getting ready to ask, like, just, cut me a break. We don't have a lot of time. Can you just do me this small kindness? Because he says, for the love of God, just give me like a little crust of bread to eat. And I thought about that before. I'm like, wow, that's even more mind blowing than the phrase at the end we expect. The moral of the story. Just with the magic of these sayings and this what this poor donkey is saying, right? He's showing us that time is fleeting, and in just an instant, you can be really good to somebody, and you can change somebody's life in an instant. So the donkeys are in these songs anyway. This song, the donkey's pretty wise too. So
we got to play this song. I'm going to play this song for everybody now in the Sicilian language, performed by Michela Musolino.
Fagioni a nomo di cristiani ci disse qualche tozzo nivoria la scira in mano di sacristani squacchia come la neve alla campia tu cali costi la posti sani penso un momento a risterare la mia rispose di buon cori lo patroni si fosse pacchiata vi ha concesso mangiarti e magari un sacco ma di un pane non ci trovo nessuno ti runghi un colzo di vasti droni ma l'appetito tutto sempre lo stesso lo scecco opportuno si corca intera disci lo sazio non crede allo Dio rispose di buon cori lo padroni si fosse pagata vi ha concesso mangiarti e magari un sacco ma di pane non ci trovo nessuno ti runghi un colzo di vasti troni ma l'appetito tutto sempre lo stesso lo scecco opportuno si corca intera disci lo sazio non crede allo Dio lo sazio non crede allo Dio
So, Michela, I love that song, and it's such a great tune, and you sing it so beautifully.
Oh, thank you.
I can feel your love. I can feel your love for the donkey. I would love for you to actually, can you read us the lyrics in English to the song?
Sure. Real quick, funny story about this song. The first time I ever heard the song, a friend of mine, Umberto Leone, played it for me. And he was playing a whole bunch of traditional songs for me. So I just thought it was a traditional song. Well, it turns out, as I said, the lyrics are traditional, but the melody was written by our mutual friend, Rocco. And it was like a surprise to me. I think Rocco's wife was like, when I was talking to her, I was thinking about recording it. She was, oh, that's nice. I'm glad you're recording one of Rocco's songs. I'm like, what do you mean? It's a traditional song. She's like, no, he wrote the music for it. I was like, oh, okay. But when I did this album, we had him translated from Sicilian into Italian into English. So there's no excuse. Everybody could know what we were saying. The lyrics are, one day a donkey was starving while he was carrying bread. So he said, dear master, for God's sake, I'd like to have a piece of bread. And then we say, candles melt in a sacristan's hands like snow on the fields. And you are a hale and hearty man. Think of my relief for one moment. The master sincerely answered, even if it had been straw, I would have given you a sackful. But it makes no sense for me to give you any bread. Even if I give you a piece of bread, your hunger will still remain the same. But the donkey was defiant. It stretched out on the ground and said, the man who has eaten enough will never believe the man who is starving.
Tell me about these bread uprisings. That sounds like a pretty important historical event.
Pretty much they were taxing everything, and they even started to tax the bread, so people couldn't afford it anymore. Basically, people wanted to eat. And this was 1848 when revolutions started to break out all around Europe. But it actually started, the real revolutions actually started in Palermo. I believe there was a woman involved. I don't have the exact history of it, but there's always usually a woman. There's even a saying in Sicilian, "Una femmina, un'oca e un tamburo va subito alla volta." All you need is a woman, a drum, and a duck, and before you know it, you have a revolution.
That's a fantastic saying from Modo di Bere. I am going to commit that to memory. Thank you. Applicable to many situations.
Yeah. It was a period of great unrest. Salvatore Adelphi was a folk poet, and he actually participated directly in these uprisings. So this was kind of his way of creating some kind of anthem to let people know of the situation during that time. But as I said, it was 1840. It was a rough time. It was a time when there was a lot of political upheaval all throughout Europe. You know, it was a strange time in southern Italy because we were getting ready for the unification, right? The unification would happen about 12 years later. One of the reasons that the unification was able to come through, or that Garibaldi was able to come through and do what he did, and I might be pontificating at this moment, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that would back me up with facts here. Because you had so much unrest, and there was a lot of coordinated unrest coming through in the years prior to the unification. So there was this almost this intentional instability was being sown, and that made things so much easier when the Piemontese could come in and destroy everything and take over. It was almost as if unrest was kind of a concerted effort to make unrest and to disturb this, to make social upheaval. And of course, who suffers? But the poor, the contadino, the farmer. They're the ones the working man is the one that will suffer.
And how do you say donkey in Sicilian?
We would say, you could say Sciccareddu or sceccu.
Sceccu?
And there, sceccu.
Sciccareddu.
And there's Sciccareddu or sceccu. There's a legend, I don't know how true it is, but there is a legend supposedly that it comes from the word sheik, like the Arab sheik, or sceccu, because when the Arabs had occupied Sicily, they made it, you couldn't ride a horse, and you couldn't be armed. You couldn't be armed, you couldn't ride a horse, or you couldn't do both at the same time, or you couldn't do one or the other or both. So when they were routed, they went after all the horses. The Sicilians went after all the horses, and the Arabs brought in more horses on ships, and the ships got wrecked. And the only ship that made it through was the ship that had all the donkeys. So they had to ride the donkeys. So now I don't know if that's true or I really don't know. That's just like a legend floating around. Yeah, but there's also that sceccu is very similar to a Turkish word for the Turkish word for donkey. So there's that too.
I love this story because there are also in Italian grape names so many different possible etymologies. Which is a really fun thing to untangle all the different versions. But either way, there's always so much rich history going back. I love the text that you sent me with the song that we played because you had the Sicilian and the Italian and the English words. And without taking us through the entire thing, I think this is a lovely example to dip back into that Sicilian language. And maybe could you pick a few lines and show us how the words sound so different from Italian to Sicilian?
The part about the candle, right? La scira.
What are you talking about that's holding the candle? Can you explain that to me?
He's using an image, like a picture. So he says the candle in the hand of the sacristan, the candle in the hand of the priest, it melts as quickly as the snow in the field. So think about it. How often does it snow, even in the mountains? And it says the snow doesn't last that long. Or if it does snow, typically the snow would, unless you're up in the mountains, the snow wouldn't last very long. It'd be very fleeting. And it's saying, imagine a candle. And so think of a sacristan with big meaty hands. He's got these little tiny candles. So the candle's not only burning, but his hands are probably melting the wax as well at the same time.
I'm wondering if you can take a stanza and read us the Italian and the Sicilian back to back, and then just talk to us a little bit about some of those sounds and word endings and show us the difference between the local language and the Italian.
La cera in mano ai sacristani si scioglie come la neve sui campi. Tu, che hai costole sane e robuste, penso un momento a ristorarmi. And in Sicilian it would be la scira in mano di li sacristani squaglia come la neve alla campia. Tu, cali costi, la robusti e sani, penso un momento a ristorare a mia. So in Italian, they have this elegance where they can, you can make the liaison between the object, the direct object, and the word. You can make it all one sound. A ristorarmi, but a ristorare a mia. In Sicily, we're going to leave it apart. We're going to say, you have to restore it to me. La scira, instead of la cera, la scira would be the candle. In mano, we're making a liaison in my hand instead of an in mano, in one, would make it one word. Here's one we talked about, and we mentioned this, this kind of sound came up before. We're talking about wife, moglia, mogliera, mugliera, me moglia, me mugliera in Sicilian. Moglie.
So you hear the G more in Sicilian.
Yeah, in Italian, when you have the GL, that diphthong, the moglie, it becomes a double G with an H in it.
Well, that's kind of hard for people. Maybe everyone should learn Sicilian instead.
Yeah, right. And then and we say squaglia in Italian. Scioglie in Italian, ma squaglia, to melt in dialect. So we had that. So there's the OGLI, that becomes double G. I can't even make the sound anyway.
I've learned some sayings from people from local parts of Sicily. A lot of times when they write them down for me in my little notebook, I feel like I see some things that I see a little bit in Sardo. Also from Sardinia, I see lots of D's and U's. Could you talk to me about those endings? Yes. I feel like every word ends in a U. Is that a kind of a good hint that you might be
kind of, instead of an O, there's a U. Yeah, very, very rare you see a Sicilian word end in an O. It's usually a U or an I even, and like E's become I's. You almost never see a word end in an E. It would end in an I instead. The double D in Sicilian, would it be in Italian? It would be double L. So bella, beggia.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It sounds like a J almost, like a DJ or a DG. Yeah, beggia.
Here's the thing. In certain parts of Sicily, it's a very hard D. Beggia. In other parts, there's that G is in that G is bedra, and there's almost an R in it. Bedra. It depends where you are in Sicily. Le campanella, double L, campaneggia. Campaneggia in Sicilian, bell be campaneggia. So it's that double L becomes the D. When my daughter was little, I wanted her to speak Italian with ease. I had to solve the code, break the code that my family was speaking in code, and I had to study Italian, and I was so determined. I got a degree in Italian language, but I didn't want my daughter to have to go through that. I wanted her to be able to learn as a child. And my former husband was from Italy. So I said, this is what we're going to do. When we have kids, we're not going to speak them in English for the first couple of years, because everywhere we go, they're speaking in English. It's, they'll be playing with the kids next door. They'll be speaking in English, but at home we'll speak Italian, and they'll speak Italian to their grandparents. So my daughter's first words were in Italian, and she would say things, and I was not speaking to her in dialect. I was speaking to her in Italian. My former husband, her dad, was speaking to her in Italian. But she would come up with words. She would respond with dialect. So I wondered if dialect became, we speak in dialect because maybe is a dialect sound instead of a developed language, is it more of a natural sound? Like it was, the double D's for her were really natural. And she would, words that should have been in Italian, like L word, double L words, she would say in with double D's very easily. And I thought that was interesting.
Was
And
she hanging
even,
out with her grandparents and everything? Or
my grandparents talked to her, but I don't think she got that much dialect. I think she got more Italian than dialect. It just seemed like it was more natural for her to respond in these, and even like the word for grandpa in dialect is tata, tata. Some people say tata nonna, some people tata, tata, tata. That came out before anything, that word. And I thought that was like, wait a minute, we never referred to my father or my father-in-law as tata. It was always nonno, nonno, nonno. But she came up with, I was like, how does she know this stuff? So I'm not sure if it's a linguistic thing and it's just easier, or is there something going around in the ether, and this kid was like, she had her little antennas out and she's picking this up from her ancestors. I don't know what it is.
Well, there's a lot of Sicilian folk rhythms going around in your house. So maybe she was just talking to your drum when you weren't looking, you know?
Yeah, but you know what? I don't even know if I wasn't even making music that much then. Yeah. So I don't even know if it was, I don't know what it was. It was just fascinating. When she was a baby, I was like, this is something that, I'd love to talk to linguists about this. Are there certain sounds that we make because they're more musical to us? Are there certain sounds? I don't know.
I love the thought of dialects versus the kind of wider used language as having a certain musicality. When people are talking about Italian, they say, oh, what a beautiful musical language about Italian. And then it's like, well, you haven't seen anything until you hear some of these dialects. Of course, all the dialects are so different. And sometimes they're not even mutually intelligible, one village to the next, which is just an incredible amount of diversity. So to come back to donkeys for a second, I wanted to share with you, and if I can find some recordings, I will, to back these up. But I have learned some sayings in dialect and in Italian about the donkey, not from Sicily, but from some different regions. So one of my favorites that I learned from my friend Rocco from Lazio.
A lavare la testa all'asino perdi tempo, acqua e sapone.
What does it mean?
So to wash the head to the donkey, you lose water, soap, and time.
So to wash a donkey's head, you can wash a donkey's head, but you'll wait.
Time.
You're going to waste your water, your soap, and your time.
I love it. That's great.
Of course, we also heard, if you go to the Modo di Bere social media and you look for the videos of Roberto di Filippo, he has his own thoughts about like, why are we so mean to the donkey? It's not that they're stubborn. It's actually that they're smart. And he has a very funny video about this.
They say we are stupid like a donkey, but it is wrong. In reality, the donkey is smarter than an horse. If you are a good horse trainer, you can ride an horse and you can push the horse. You are on the horse, you can push him to jump down from a cliff to die. Don't try to do that with a donkey because he will never do that. So who is the smarter, horse or donkey? I don't know why we are talking about the donkey in a so bad way. I love them. They are really noisy, but they are also smart and also cute.
Thank you, Roberto.
My daughter, when she was little, we actually got to visit friends of ours. They live in North Carolina, but they have a farm in Virginia, and they raise miniature Sicilian donkeys. So when she was little, they had a little tiny saddle. She could ride the donkeys.
I need a picture.
Somewhere I have this adorable picture of her like playing with the donkeys when she's little. We were in Sicily one summer, and her dear friend, my friend's daughter, she was an equestrian, and she said, "Come with me to the maneggio. Come on, let's go." So I told my daughter, "Oh, she's gonna love this." Well, she was not really happy, and she didn't want to go back the next day. She said, "I don't want to go back." I'm like, "I don't understand. She rides donkeys." So another friend of ours who's a farmer in Sicily, and he raises donkeys. And he raises the big donkeys. He said, of course she doesn't want to be around horses. Donkeys have a sweet nature. She would rather be around that. And I didn't realize, he said, think about it. Horses have a very different, it's an animal. It's a work. We don't really tend to think that they have a nature. They have a personality. He said, yeah, there's a big difference in the personality. And she really doesn't, she picks that up. She really doesn't want to be around something that's so high strung and can be kind of fierce, but donkeys are much, much sweeter. So that kind of put things in perspective. I can still remember him saying, you should know this. I'm like, well, how would I know this? Like I don't raise them. So
They're also kind of fuzzy. I saw some donkeys when I was in Italy, and they just a little fuzzy around the ears. And we would see them driving by on the road. And there were some at the agriturismo where we were staying in Lombardia. They were very, very sweet, the donkeys. Yeah.
they are. They look, I think the fuzz makes them look cute. The little
fuzz around the ears. Yeah. They're awfully cute.
But there's another song that's very, very well known in Sicilian folklore, and it's O Sciccareddu mio, or O Sciccareddu di lume cori, my little donkey, or little donkey of my heart. There's a version they sing in Calabria. And this is a really well-known song. And in this song, there's always somebody in the band or whoever's singing it or somebody there, or when the band plays this song, some guy always knows how to make the sound of a donkey, because the way the verses are structured is that there's a pause and you hear the donkey bray, and that's where somebody would like pipe up. So what would happen in my shows, I would start talking about the donkey. I'm going to sing a Sicilian song about a donkey. And there's usually like some couple of old guys in the audience who get really excited because they were waiting for somebody in the band to start braying like a donkey. And I said, it's not going to happen here. It's a different song. But actually one time in a concert, I said, we don't even have anybody in the band that could. I said, none of my musicians know how to make that sound. And one of the guys in the audience says, I can. I said, can you really? So he got up on stage and he made the donkey noise. He brayed like a donkey. So we had these cute little instruments that a friend of mine made, the little Sicilian instruments. And we gave him a gift and a CD. We thanked him for coming up on stage. So that's always how those songs are tied in. But you need to know about the other song, the song where they bray like a donkey. In it, the singer keeps talking about his beautiful little donkey. And I love my donkey, but they killed my donkey. And now he's distraught. And he says, when my wife died, I cried, but I didn't really have sorrow in my heart. But when my donkey died, I was inconsolable.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, here's why donkey's so important, right? And even why did Salvatore Adelfio use a donkey as a metaphor for the peasant, for the contadino, for the working man? Why? Because the donkey was crucial for survival in Sicily. If you had a donkey, you could live, you could farm, you could support your family, you could feed your family. And why would they use a donkey as a metaphor for the peasant? Well, the donkey could do backbreaking work. Donkeys are very strong and they can do incredible work. They don't complain. They don't stop. They just keep working. They don't stop. Donkeys can go for long periods without stopping to drink water. They can work in incredible heat. Donkeys can go for long periods without food. So they're somebody that can, pretty much subsist on almost nothing, just a little bit of grass, and do this backbreaking work and just survive. So that was used as a metaphor for the peasant and the contadino, we say, the farmer, the working man. And also that, the donkeys, why would the little guy in the song be inconsolable? Well, you can always find another wife, right? But your donkey, if you don't have a donkey, you can't maintain a wife. You can't have kids. You can't have a family. So the donkey was always
first.
Crucial. It was crucial to this existence once upon a time when we were an agrarian society.
Donkeys before Molière.
Yeah, right. Primo lo sceccu, poi la moglie. That's why I just love these songs so much, because they're fun. They're fun songs, or they make you think about history. But the reality is they show a way that we lived that we tend to forget. How we had, how important it was to have these, how crucial it was to have something like this, to have these animals near us.
So I'm definitely going to have to find a little donkey sound effect, or possibly just interview someone in the audience to see if they can make the donkey sound.
Oh, we can find that. I can find that for you.
Oh, yes.
Don't worry about that.
Okay. All right. Send me the donkey songs.
Actually, what we did one time, we did do this song a couple of times. And what we used to do is we used to have our clarinet player just like make some sounds on the clarinet. It wasn't as good as the donkey bray. It wasn't. It wasn't as good. Trust me, it wasn't as good.
Can you do it?
No, I'm not going to do it.
All right. No. You did wear the donkey earrings, though.
I did. I have.
Let me see.
I have this pair of earrings. They're from Palermo. I have to remember the name of the store. It just went out of my head.
You can send it to me. We can put it in the show notes.
I will definitely. And they were handmade in Sicily, and I brought them back I can't get my light off now. I brought them back for my daughter. They're actually my daughter's earrings, but she's very kind to me, and she lets, because I won't let her wear my stuff, and she lets me wear her stuff. So there's a little, I don't know if you can see it. There's a little, how close can I get? Because I'm like, I don't even see. There's a little donkey on here.
Oh my
A little
goodness.
donkey.
Those are amazing.
And I love them. I love them. And this one has, I believe this one has a babaluch. Maybe that's another show we have to do.
What's a babaluch?
A snail, a lumaca.
Ah,
Babaluch.
babaluch. I learned a saying from Palermo. The phrase translated to, "You have more horns than a chariot full of snails." And I think it used that word, right? And he explained to me that, like, in many cultures, the horns are the symbol of a cuckold, like a guy who's somebody sleeping with his wife. But that in this part of Sicily, it meant kind of like a badass. I don't know. It means the person's a badass. He kind of did like the horns, like the rock star horns. I just had this image, though, of, I think he meant like cart. He said chariot. So you have more horns than a chariot full of snails. And I'm just imagining a chariot full of snails. Like, someone needs to put this on a T-shirt.
I was going to say, this would be a great picture. Like, you could sell like pictures, you know?
Really colorful, kind of like the Grateful Dead, you know? So I have a friend here who works with Rocco, actually, who taught me the donkey saying. He's from Catania, and I told him about the saying, and I said, "Oh, I learned a Sicilian saying. Can you show it to me?" First of all, he had no idea, which I should have known because they're totally far away from each other. He said, "That's not a positive thing." And then I met a guy from Puerto Rico, but he was talking about one part of Central America. It's the cabron. It's like an insult, and it means like a cuckold, like someone sleeping with your wife. You're a sucker or something. But then he was like, but in this other country, cabron means like a badass. And I was like, oh, I knew it. After the guy from Catania was like, that's totally wrong. I was doubting my comprehension of this conversation. But then I found out there's another example.
Cabrón is the word for bastard. But in Puerto Rico, you could be like, tú eres cabrón, you're a bastard. Or, eso está bien cabrón. This is the shit. Eso está bien cabrón. Tú te ves bien cabrona. You look amazing. It is, context clues are very important.
So guys, if anyone knows a reverse cuckold badass comment from somewhere else in the world, please, you can send me a message. We want to know about this category of sayings. I also have been collecting. It's a great icebreaker. I will sometimes ask, what do you say when you have a hangover, when you've had too much to drink the night before? Now, this is interesting to me because I've noticed in Italian that sometimes, Italian dialects, that sometimes the word for hangover is the same word for drunk. I've had a lot of fun with this because a lot of times the phrases involve animals. We could do a whole episode about hangover sayings, not just from Italy. But my favorite, the king of all of these, and I'm going to play a recording here because I know I have it. I met some wonderful, jolly, angelic in a sense, but very down-to-earth farmers from Piemonte who are going and saving from obscurity and possible extinction the Nasciuta grape. It's a white grape, and it makes this fascinating textured, delicious savory wine. And I had an absolute blast with them at Vinitaly last year, and again this year I saw them. Instead of the donkey carrying you, when you've had too much to drink the night before, you are carrying the donkey. And that's what it means. I'm such a bad state. It's like I've got a donkey that I'm carrying around. So it's a little reversal, and I thought that was really funny. Do you have anything else to share with us about donkeys in Sicily or elsewhere in your life?
Well, I don't know how important this is to show, but it's something sweet that happened in my life. We had, used to have a garden center where I used to live in northern New Jersey, and they had a farm. You know, they had, so they would have, and they had farm animals, and they encouraged all the kids to go play with the farm animals. And that was open to the public. So anytime we had to get, buy your plants, buy your mulch, buy whatever you need, your garden tools, and then put it in the car, and then you walk around to the back and the kids could play with the animals. So my daughter loved it because they had miniature Sicilian donkeys.
Oh my
And you could feed them. It was so much fun. It was beautiful. Well, years go by, and one of my musicians calls me and says, "Listen, Michela, I got this gig. If you want to do it, it's for this couple. They're making their 50th wedding anniversary. They're Sicilian. They used to have a folk group. and they want to have music. I'm good friends with their son-in-law. And I said, yeah, sure. Why not? It was one of the most fun gigs I ever had. And one of those things I said, please tell me if there's any songs that they really want, and we'll make sure we do them because we want to cover whatever. We want them to be, this is their day. Well, as it turns out, the son-in-law was the owner of the garden center. And I was like, wait a minute. Like what, like how I had no idea that these people were all related. And he's like, yeah, those are our donkeys. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my daughter. For our entire childhood, we were there like every week with these donkeys. And it turns out years later, I was singing for their family. We had no idea that we had this connection between between the donkeys. So that was so there's donkeys everywhere.
Did you sing the donkey song?
I sang sceccu. I didn't sing the one about, being that it was an anniversary. I didn't think they wanted to hear the one about, if my wife died. I really didn't cry that much. I didn't cry with.
That was very a good curatorial decision on your part. Yes, no, good call.
We did do sceccu because it's a fun song. And people love it. It's really a song that people love because and like I said, I just think it's such a beautiful song because it's uses the donkey as that metaphor. The donkey's teaching us a lesson.
So I think that is a really important message. That's really hitting home for me this week. Thank you so much for sharing it. Yeah, you can make such a big difference just by not being a jerk.
Yeah, and it
makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and it's all in an instant. In the blink of an eye, you could change somebody's life. You can be good. And you think about it, right? This song came out at the beginning of a revolution, but had the people been allowed to have bread, I mean, something so basic, can we just afford to have bread? Can you stop taxing us because we can't eat right now? Stop taxing the very food we eat. How the whole face of history might have been changed. That everything's like, history's all like on a fulcrum, right? And that's, I guess, what the donkey's telling us. That in an instant, you could change things for the better.
That's true. Just takes a piece of bread. Just a little piece of bread, guys. Not much. Just, throw me a crust here.
That's exactly what he said. If you're well fed, just give me something.
You were saying that a friend of yours wrote the music. So back in the day, was this only a poem?
Yes.
Wasn't set to music, and then your friend set it to music?
Yeah, historically, it came from a poem. So the poem was written during that time of the revolution, 1848. There was actually, Adelphio there was a series of poems that he had written, not necessarily all about the revolution, but in that period there was a book that he had written of poems. My friend, for many years, he had a folk group in Milan. All these Sicilian guys moved from Salinunte down near Trapani, and they moved up to Milan. Around 1979, he made lyrics, he made a melody for it. He composed a melody. And what's funny about this song, even before I recorded it, because this song has gone around Sicily, and a lot of people think it's a traditional song. And it's like, no, it comes from a traditional poem, but it's really, it was composed. It was a modern composition, a modern melody, but it's such a powerful song that people hear it and they think, well, it must be traditional.
It's pretty iconic, I have to say.
Yeah.
Your friend did an amazing job.
He did. And that's my friend Rocco Polina.
So what's going on these days with your music?
I'm getting ready to get on the road, which, as you know, if we're not on the road, we feel like we're shriveling and we're we're stagnating.
I do like to be on tour. It's true.
But here's something that's really cool. And I think this will go wonderful with your podcast with Modo di Bere. When I got down in Memphis, I said, people need, I need to become part of this community. I want people to know who I am. I don't want to just be on the fringes. So I started contacting all these organizations, and Tennessee has an arts commission or something like that, or Tennessee Arts Council. So I contacted them, and they have a folk life division. And I've been in correspondence with them, and they said, well, we're going to have a project coming up. And I didn't understand what this was. I thought I was just going for seminars. I was just going to listen to people and meet people. So I was like, oh, this will be great. I signed up for whatever this was. I made a proposal, whatever. Well, apparently I'm in part of this incubator for projects now for the Tennessee Folklife Institute. And I came in with the idea that, well, Sicilians and Italians have made music historically since antiquity, and it's documented on the Italian peninsula that we've been making music since, pre-Christian times. Well, when they came to the US, what did they do? Well, a lot of people in my audience say, well, okay, this is fantastic. We love this history, but what happened when the Italians got here? What did they do? What happens when the Sicilians got here? I wanted to see what happened with the Italian immigrants here in Memphis and making music. So now this is a project I'm doing, and I'm collecting interviews from Sicilian Americans and Italian Americans here in Memphis, and how music influenced and how whether they made music as a hobby in their family, as a tradition, or whether they were part of the music industry here in Memphis. For example, the first record store in Memphis was started by two Italian American guys. Elvis bought his first record from that store.
That's wild.
So I have no idea where this is going to go. I don't know what's going to happen. This whole thing I started because I just wanted to find music. And I was saying, if I could find some music that Italian Americans are making in the Memphis, and how the Memphis sound influence. So, because I love to collect songs, I'm like, how can I put it in my show? How can I give this to the audience? So now I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where this is going to wind up, but I'm like documenting interviews now. I'm collecting interviews from people. I'm putting this out there. If anybody's listening and you have a connection to Memphis and a connection to in music, or somebody in your family had a connection to Memphis and music, let me know. Come talk to me. I want to interview you. I want to document it. If you have, stories you want to tell, I'm here to listen. So this is something I'm working on, and I'm trying to figure out can I make a show out of this? What can I do? Because I'm also working on some new music for a lot of my tours this year, and we're taking Sicilian traditions and we're putting them, it's a continuation of the album that I put out at Christmas, where we're mashing them up with American traditions from the South. It's like South crashes into South, and it's a lot of fun. We're going to see how that unfolds and what happens. And I'm thinking in my head, I don't know how to do this now. And again, whoever's listening, I'm thinking I know everybody's doing podcasts now, but I think I need to do some kind of concert or show on like televised or filmed. I think I need to do something. I don't know how to put that together.
Well, Modo di Bere has a YouTube channel, and we are doing Modo di Bere TV, and we are filming stuff. So let's talk. That sounds like an amazing project, and I've never been to Memphis. How can people get in touch with you if they want to write to you about Memphis and Sicily and music in Memphis, or if they want to buy your records and find out when you're playing next? Where can they go?
Easiest way to find me is to go to my website, michelamusolino.com. There's a contact page. I have a page for concerts, like my upcoming shows. I have a store where you can buy my albums. You can buy them in physical or download. And like to tell everybody, digital is fantastic. But if you own the actual physical CD, no corporation will ever erase it from your playlist. I would have had vinyl, but I couldn't get my hands on vinyl. I look at all your beautiful vinyl behind you at your studio, and I couldn't get my hands on vinyl for almost a year, so I couldn't press the album in vinyl. Maybe next year I'll press it in vinyl. We'll see.
That would be great, just in time for the holidays. Yeah.
michelamusolino.com, or come to a show and meet me at a show, which I'm looking forward to. I can't wait. I just can't wait to see people in the audience again. I can't wait to connect with the audience. It's so much fun to have a live audience. It's wonderful. We do things online. I even learned the magic of having, when you have to videotape something, or when you're doing a live broadcast online, the magic of actually having a live audience. It changes the whole world.
We should do a show together, either in Memphis, New York, or somewhere. Okay, let's do it. Yeah, let's set this up. I really appreciate you for sharing this with me. I wanted to tell you one more donkey saying that I learned on my most recent trip to Italy. I was in Polaggia, which is a little village that got swallowed up by the slightly bigger village of Berbeno. We spent 3 afternoons at the local bar. Everyone was telling us we had to meet this legend, Mario. He, among many other songs and sayings, he taught me the saying. Basically, the tale is this woman was trying to tell her husband that he was drinking a little too much. And he responded to her in dialect, "Silly woman, I'm not like the donkey who drinks only when he's thirsty."
Wow.
Which I just thought was so funny. I'm a civilized creature. It's here at Modo di Bere. We started the show with all the sayings about how water was not good to drink and that you should only drink wine. So we know what he's talking about drinking. Maybe in Polaggia, the donkeys even drink wine. Well, who knows? It was so fun to talk to you about this. Thank you so much for sharing this really sweet interview with us. I totally want to go pet a donkey now.
I know.
Send me your donkey stories. Thank you so much for checking in and listening to this episode. Send me a message. Tell me something about a donkey from your life. I want to hear everything. Thanks again, Michela.
Thanks for having me.
And wherever you go and whatever you like to drink, always remember to enjoy your life and to never stop learning. Support us on Patreon. Grab the newsletter at mododibere.com and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Modo di Bere to watch the travel show, Modo di Bere TV. Music for the show was composed by Ercilia Prosperi for the band Oh. Purchase their music at the link in the notes.